Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we return to talking about the Young Turks here on YouTube. This far left, very progressive platform here is hosted, of course, by its owner and creator, Cenk Uygur. He's been getting a lot of news lately because of a lot of dumb things he's been doing over the years. Essentially, the Young Turks and Cenk have been breaking down almost ever since 2016 when President Trump won the presidential election, of course, and they were simply shocked and stunned. They had no idea it was coming. They couldn't believe it. And ever since that happened, they've basically been in damage control mode. They've gone off the deep end. They've shown their true colors. And worst of all, they've been begging for money a lot since that time. Even though they have these big donors and they're also on YouTube's side, they get promotion and preferential treatment. But despite all that, they're constantly begging for cash. They're a failing company that's not profitable, apparently. They're wasting money on ads or too many employees or something. I'm not sure what the hell's going on over there, but essentially they need money, so they're asking for it a lot. And the frequency with which they ask for money is getting pretty overwhelming. They kind of have these fundraisers almost every month of the year, all the time. They're constantly asking for more. I need 100,000 here. I need 100,000 here. And then on top of that, this year, Cenk Uygur even asked for additional money so he could run for Congress. This guy thinks he's a politician now, which is pretty outrageous because he's just some know-nothing wannabe reporter who doesn't even really report on anything. All they do is read articles that other people wrote on the Young Turks. But either way, Cenk got in his head that he could run for Congress, and that failed miserably. We've talked about that story a few times. That happened a few months ago, and Cenk could barely get a few small percentages of his area's vote. He failed. He lost all that money, and then now we're in the aftermath of that, and what's happened since then, it's been about a month or two, and they've just been kind of trying to recover, starting more fundraisers, getting people to try and join their channel, and just constantly asking for more money. And another big blow to the Young Turks before we get to their new shenanigans is Bernie Sanders, of course, lost the primary. Now Joe Biden is the candidate for the Democrats for the presidential election that's happening this year. And if you're familiar, you probably know that progressives like the Young Turks, they loved Bernie Sanders. They were all Bernie, all in for so long. They've been talking trash about Biden for a long time too. So I'm actually curious if they're going to kind of fold over and vote for Biden and try and at least help beat their number one enemy, President Trump. But either way, that's another big loss for them. The progressives lost. Bernie's the progressive candidate, and he lost, and that's just going to really shake them because they thought Bernie was going to win in 2016. Then they thought they really had it this year, and now they're just failing. But there is some new information. You see, in light of the progressives losing, in light of TYT falling apart, Cenk has a new endeavor he wants to engage in that is probably inspired by Bernie Sanders himself. Bernie Sanders, of course, claims to be this socialist communist who wants to give away everyone's money and not have any property for himself. But at the same time, Bernie got filthy, stinking rich after he ran for president in 2016. Even though he lost, even though he's a failed candidate, he still got a lot of money, and he did so by selling books. Bernie wrote a book, a lot of people bought it, and it made him millions of dollars. So I think Cenk kind of saw that idea, and now he's running with it. Cenk has a book that he's coming out with, but there's a very interesting caveat to his premise. You see, Cenk has a book, and he has a cover ready, and he's going to show us the printed out cover, but he hasn't actually written the book yet. So he has some fake cover with empty pages in it, which is already ridiculous, and Cenk's trying to sell this book before he even writes it, kind of putting the cart before the horse, so to speak. And it's going to be really fun to watch. And there's a video clip here from his Twitter where he's selling the book before it comes out, basically just showing how entitled he is. He's so entitled. He thinks everyone should be giving him money because he's so smart or something, when really he's pathetic and should be vlogging from a basement or something. He shouldn't have a studio. He could be political if he wants to, but he's a know-nothing, just kind of propped up puppet for all these other people that are wanting him to push liberal propaganda. But anyway, let's get to that video. I've got a clip of it here on the Twitter. The tweet says, "Fine, you win. Cenk is writing a book on the Young Turks, giving TY Tuesday special. He revealed the title is Justice is Coming, how progressives are going to take over the country and America is going to love it." Watch on YouTube. Okay, we're going to watch that video in a second. But the funny part about this, before we even get to it, is First of all, Cenk thinks he's some kind of leader of the progressives. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I could see him being a figurehead or something. Of course, he might have some influence, but he tries to claim that he's a progressive leader, even though he just lost an election himself, even though his progressive candidate Bernie Sanders lost his second primary. But they want to say that they're this big thing, so let's watch and see where this goes.
My whole life, people have been telling me to do one thing. And they keep saying this, especially since I've been on the Young Turks. Every friend I have, every family member, and a lot of you guys. Will you, for God's sake, do this thing, Cenk? What is it? Write a book. Fine, you win. The name of the book is Justice is Coming. Of course! Subtitle, How Progressives Are Going to Take Over the Country, and America is going to love it.
Well, I think progressives have had their chances. I'm not saying their movement isn't possibly growing. It might be slowly growing, but we've seen, again, how progressive candidates like Bernie Sanders have failed. Other ones like AOC have become big embarrassments for the Democrats and their party and all the people on the left. And I just think it's pretty ridiculous. First of all, we know he hasn't written this book yet. He hasn't gotten to that quote, but he hasn't written this book. He's got the cover. He's got the name and all this stuff printed out, but no actual book here. And then the other thing I really like about this intro, it's not a good look for Cenk though, but it's just funny how he's like reluctantly writing this book. He's saying, people have been asking me to write a book for years. I never did it though, because I'm lazy. I don't know how to write. And I just kind of talk shit on the internet. But then he's like, all right, fine, I'll do it. It's not really the place you want to come from when you're writing a book. You want someone that's curious and interested in writing. You want someone who has a story to tell, but this is obviously just a situation where he's money grabbing more. We're talking about a desperate guy who's trying to get money from his fans, who are just kind of a bunch of cash cows to him, I think. I don't think he really cares about his fan base either. But yeah, if he really cared, if he really was going to sell a book, write it first. Do it behind the scenes. Maybe have a tease on your Twitter or something. You could mention it. But this big announcement and this big presentation before it's even written is absolutely ridiculous. And it's also, he looks like he's doing it begrudgingly. And in addition to that, it's just, he seems so confident. Like, why do you think people actually want to read your book, dude? Like, I doubt people actually were asking for him to write a book a lot like he claims in the beginning here. I think he was just making some kind of dumb joke, but it just came off really bad.
Okay, so here I got a hard copy with me here too. Is it already written? Nope. Some of it is written, but I'm working on the rest. So what you can do now, it's not out yet, you can pre-order. So
okay, pre-orders are always dumb. I always make these jokes about pre-orders. It's kind of pointless. I mean, in certain small situations, it might work. Like, oh, I pre-ordered my food at the grocery store and I can pick it up at 1. Or, you could pre-order something else. I don't even know. There's not that many situations where pre-ordering is necessary. I mean, people try to pre-order video games a lot. They really want you to do that, but it's always a waste of time. And then pre-ordering books, it's just kind of silly. It's like he hasn't written it. Why does he have a book to hold then? What's in that book? It's just an empty book with a cover. He's selling a cover with no content in it. I think he claims he started writing it, like he has a few lines written, a few pages or chapters, but I'm not even sure I buy that. It just seems like a total ruse. It seems like, oh, he's going to sell it first and then write whatever, or I don't even think he'll write it. I think he'll ghost write. He'll get some random person to write it for him, and then he'll read over it once and just cash in. It's just totally ridiculous, and it just shows how he's just not serious about that. He's like, did I write it yet? Nope. It's like, I didn't want to write this either, but I'm like, fine, I'll do it. Everyone wants a book. And it's like, no, you're just doing it because everyone else is writing books. Like, books is like this kind of thing these politicians do. These political people in the news, eventually they all come out with some kind of book, and there's nothing wrong with that either. I mean, I've considered it myself. Like, I've had a few ideas. I'm not like a big writer. I write my videos a lot, and I write a lot of stuff for you guys, but I mean, it's something you could offer. There's a good way to do it. Like, there's nothing wrong with, say, a YouTuber. I mean, remember, Cenk is just a big overproduced YouTuber. He's not really a newsman. He's not really as famous as he claims. He's just another YouTube channel who has a few subordinates under him and a bigger budget. So yeah, YouTubers can write books. people do it all the time, and it's nice to have, like, if you have an extra product for people. It's like how you sell shirts or mugs or something. It's not pushed upon. It's not something, oh, you have to press and ask for and be desperate, like the TYT is always sounding desperate, like they're dying for money. And I understand that happens. I mean, everyone's had money problems at some point, but it's just this desperation reeks. And we also should know Cenk is a multimillionaire. Everyone working at TYT has a lot of money. Like his number two, Anna Kasparian, is a millionaire. These guys are very well off. Their channel and their job could shut down tomorrow, and they'll still have enough money for the rest of their lives. Their families will have enough money. Cenk's kids will still go to college, all that stuff. So they don't need money. Their company might need money to stay afloat, but they're not broke. They're all rich. And in addition to that, back to the book thing. I mean, the book thing, it's just nice to have a book on the side. Like I've seen other YouTubers do it right. I actually just remember Dave Rubin wrote a book, and he came out with it when he wrote it, and then he did a little press thing. I saw it on Twitter. I mean, that's not something I would read necessarily, but I don't read many books at all. And I just understand the way they're coming from. Like, okay, Mark Dice has a book. Other people have books on here. Other reporters, actual reporters, have books like Sean Hannity. I remember Bill O'Reilly would always have a book. But they would just kind of casually do it on the side, maybe come out with a book like once a year, every other year, and then offer it up to their audience like at the end of the show. But that's not what Cenk's doing. Cenk didn't write anything. He's begrudgingly come up with a book cover, and he's trying to sell it before he even wrote it to try and make easy cash. So a big difference here. You can tell he doesn't really have a plot or an idea. Like, I mean, it's just this vague kind of nicety, like justice is coming. He acting like he's like speaking for justice, but dude, there's nothing here. Like, there's no premise. If he had one, he would have already showed us.
If you go to justicescomingbook.com, justicescomingbook.com, you can start pre-ordering on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all other outlets. Eventually, obviously, we'll have it on at our shop as well. And by the way, the pre-orders make a big difference because then based on that, Amazon and the others will order more books.
Yeah, that's how book companies work. If people order books, they'll make more of them. The pre-order part isn't really necessary, though. I mean, you could do the same kind of thing if your book was ready, you put it on for sale, and then say you sell 50, then they make 50 more. I mean, the pre-order thing, I guess you could argue it's good to show some interest and get an idea of how many to print ahead of time, but I just think the whole thing's absurd, and he's trying to explain book selling to us like we've never heard of a company or business before, and he doesn't have an idea. That's the other thing. He's going to sell the book before we even know what it's about. I mean, I know we got a title. We have justicescoming.com. Like, he made a flashy website. One of his interns probably popped it together, but that's not really any substance. Like, what is this book about? Like, you're trying to save the world with progressive politics? Like, I think it's going to be nothing in there. It's just going to be a bunch of fluff about the classic progressive BS he's always talked about every day. Nothing new, no stories, no interesting, oh, this is Cenk's trip to a certain country and he talks about the government there. Like, I mean, that's just a random idea. I wouldn't really want to read any book by Cenk, but this is the idea. What I'm getting across is you need a book idea. Like, is your book about, say it's just a story about some superhero who got infected by a radioactive field mouse, you know? I mean, just like, that's a fiction, but what if it's a political book? I mean, it could be about the progressive movement. He can make a book about his relationship with AOC, about the times he interviewed Bernie Sanders. Could be even be interesting. I don't know. There's nothing in here. He hasn't said anything about it. All he said is, I have a book and I'm selling it. And that just reads a lot bad to me. That reads really negative. That reads, I'm just trying to make money. I don't care what this book's about. And that's the wrong reason to make something. I mean, it's like making a movie just for the money, or just making a song or an album, or recording a comedy for just selling it first before you even wrote it. It's like, what's your story? What are you actually doing here?
What's going to be in the book is what we've gone through so far, the battles that we've fought, and I got some stories for you guys, and some stories I haven't even said on air yet, and that'll be in the book. But also how we are going to take over the country with great detail, and I'm going to prove that the country's already progressive. I've already written that chapter. You're going to love that chapter. It is.
Okay, you gotta appreciate the guy's enthusiasm, albeit it gets a little annoying. But here's where you see he thinks he's this big progressive leader. He thinks he's going to lead the progressive movement to take over the country, and it's just very overconfident, unsubstantiated bravado. I mean, we just talked about how his progressive candidate lost the primary in an election twice, and he lost an election earlier this year. So, I mean, where are all these progressives at? He acts like everyone's a secret progressive, and I don't doubt that there's many of them out there, but it's certainly not as convincing or as many as he's leading on. And then, in addition to that, and this brings us to our last point for today, because right now we've got one more tweet to kind of show you where this would go if, say, Cenk took over. If he had these Democrats in power like he wanted, he wants to take over and get all these progressives around. And here's a pretty telling tweet from yesterday. It says, if we had a Democrat with balls when we take over, they'd cut off funding to red states and make them beg for their handout. Almost all of them are welfare queens who live off the blue states. Republican-run states are, on average, miserable failures who take more from federal government. Okay, wow. Very telling situation there. Remember, this is a guy who ran for public office. He wants to be in charge. He wants to tell people what to do. And if he had that choice, he would literally make these red states beg for their handouts, make them cut off, take away whatever funding from the federal government, whatever he means here. He's just saying, essentially, he hates Republicans, he hates red states, and he has no problem cutting them off. Now, on the flip side, you could say, yeah, we've talked a lot of shit about the blue states, and I've done a fair share of videos about how they're misrun, they've had terrible leaders, they've had Democrats ruin them in places like New York and California, but I've never said, oh, I hate that state, like I hate those people, like I want them to be ended. I wouldn't want to cut them off. I want them to vote in better people. I want us to have a better run country. And the biggest problems right now are these blue places. And Cenk has shown his true colors here. I'm trying to show you mine. I'm very compassionate. I don't blame all the people. Granted, I blame a lot of the people that are electing the wrong people. But this isn't about cutting anyone off or taking away rights or handouts to anyone. The point is, Cenk Uygur is power hungry, and he would take over these red states and bat them down. He thinks he has the moral high ground when he really doesn't. And it's really ridiculous, and it's gotten to this fever pitch. He's trying to sell this book he hasn't written, and he wants to kind of send these progressives to take over, which could be pretty scary. We can see they're already very attracted to power. They love their authoritarian ways. They love keeping these locks down. They love keeping these places locked down as long as possible because it keeps them in charge. And it's because of terrible people like Cenk Uygur. Thanks for watching today's video, everyone. Make sure you comment your thoughts on everything below. I want to know what you think about the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, his book that is yet to be written, their financial problems, and also this progressive myth that he's pushing, saying the progressives are everywhere, the progressives are going to take over, blah, blah, blah. I'm not sure I'm buying that, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Also, make sure you hit that like button if you enjoyed what you saw today, and until next time, you guys have a good one.